Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled Keeping the Law Inwardly. And it's taken from Romans, the second chapter, verses 12 through 24, and verses 28 through 29. There are three outlines in our lesson today. The first outline is Romans, the second chapter, verses 12 through 16 in its no defense. And the second outline is verses 17 through 24 of the second chapter of Romans, and that is practice, not possession. And the third outline is the inside counts, and that's verse 28 through 29 of the second chapter of Romans. Now, Paul, the Apostle Paul, is the author of Romans, and he is writing this letter to Rome, to the Romans, from Corinth, and this is at the close of his third missionary journey. Now, in this lesson here, or in this chapter, Paul is explaining the gospel of grace. And in that, he is saying that you're justified by grace through faith in Jesus Christ alone. Okay, now our lesson begins at the 12th verse of the second chapter of Romans. But if we look at verse 11 of that same chapter, it says, "For there is no respect of person with God." So he's setting up the stage here, letting everyone know, whether you Jew or Gentile, is of no advantage. And we know that the Jews were considered God's chosen people. So the Jews felt that they had a one-up on everybody else, on the Gentiles, because they were God's chosen people and they were given the law. Okay, but in the 11th verse of this second chapter, I'm going to read it again. "For there is no respect of person with God." So the Jews are in error when they think that they have a special privilege because they are Jews and they were given the law. But Paul says there is no advantage here. Okay, so our lesson starts at verse 12. Let's read verse 12, which is the first outline, the first set of scriptures here. Verse 12 says, "For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in law shall be judged by the law." Okay, so as I said, the Jews were given the law, okay, whereas the Gentiles were not given the law, okay. But we gotta say that whether you're Jew or Gentile, you will be judged fairly, okay? You will be judged fairly, whether you be a Jew or whether you be a Gentile. For the Jews, that is, before Christ, will be judged according to the law because they were given the law. As I said, the Gentiles was never given the law. So they won't be judged by the law, but they will be judged, and they will be judged fairly. Okay, let's go to, that's verse 12. So the Jews will be judged before Christ. They will be judged by the law because they were given the law. The Gentiles were not given the law, so that they will not be judged by the law. Let's go on. Verse 13. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. Okay, so doing the law, being an observer or obeying the law is what's gonna make you justified. Okay, but doers of the law shall be justified. Okay, doing it brings about the justification. Let's go to verse 14. For when the Gentiles which have not the law, as I mentioned already, for when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law in themselves. Let's read verse 15, which show the work of the law written in their heart, their conscience also bearing witnesses, and their thoughts, and though the means which accusing or else excusing one another. Okay, so as I said, the judgment will be fair. So those without the law will be judged based on their conscience. And we know man was made in the image of God, and everyone has a conscience, and that conscience is an unwritten law in our hearts. The conscience is an unwritten law in our hearts. It tells us right from wrong. Okay, we are made in the image of God, and our conscience tells us right from wrong. So the Gentiles will be judged based on their conscience, based on right from wrong. Now, okay, man is made in the image of God. Let's do an example here. Animals are not made in the image of God. Animals don't know right from wrong. You said, what about an animal that takes the life of a person? They don't have an animal prison. We know that. They may isolate that animal, or they may even put that animal to sleep. Now you said, well, they executed the animal. That means the animal knew right from wrong. No, they put the animal to sleep or isolate the animal so they will not do it again. They will not be able to do it again. They do not put the animal to sleep or isolate the animal so they can contemplate on what they did wrong. And as we know, in our law, in our society, if a person commits a crime and they are determined, not just say it, they are determined that they are insane, they give an insanity plea, and it turns out that it's upheld. The insanity defense is upheld. That person cannot be executed. Now, you say, well, they lock them up. Yes, they lock them up. Or they take them from society so they won't do it again. The person is insane. They really don't know right from wrong, but they can't let that insane person move about in society so they can do it again to other people. That's why they isolate them. That's why they put them in a mental institution, not because they knew right from wrong, They said they was insane. They didn't know right from wrong. So that's what animals don't know right from wrong. They will isolate them. They may put them to sleep, not because they knew right from wrong. So man has a conscience, which is an unwritten law that tells you right from wrong. That's why every person will be judged fairly. Those that are not given the law will be judged based on their conscience. And the conscience tells you right from wrong. Okay, so let's go back to verse 14. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, and those not having the law are the law unto themselves. Verse 15, which show the works of the law written in their heart. Their conscience also bears witness in the thoughts, means which were acquired or else excusing another. So we all have a conscience that tells us right from wrong. So if whether you have the law as the Jews were given the law, they will be judged based on the law that they were given. Whereas the Gentiles will not, they will be judged based on their conscience. That is the unwritten law that's in their heart or in our heart. Okay, so the judging will be fair, whether you a Jew or a Gentile. Okay, see, the first outline goes to 16, so we need to read 16. In the day which God shall judge the secret of men by Jesus Christ, according to my gospel. Now, this is talking about the great white throne judgment. Every person, there will be a great white throne judgment, and they will stand and they will be judged based on the era where they lived. If they were under the law before Christ, Jews, they will be based on the law. Gentiles, based on the unwritten law in their heart, that is the conscience. As I said, every man is made in the image of God, not animals, okay? So animals will not be standing giving judgment, in judgment, because animals don't know right from wrong. Let's go to the second outline, and it starts at verse 17 through 24, and it's practice, not possession. Now, this particular outline here, Paul is talking to the Jews. He's addressing this to the Jews. Verse 17 says, behold, thou art called a Jew, and rested in the law, and make thy boast of God, and knowest his will, and approves the things which are more excellent, being instructed out of the law. Verse 19, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide to the blind, a light to them which are in darkness. So the Jews were given the law. They were to be a light to the world, a light to the Gentiles, okay? But now we know they fail miserably, but that's what it was required of them. They were to be a light to the Gentiles. Let's go to verse 20. An instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes. This is talking about the Jews. A teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and the truth in the law. They knew the law. They were given the law. They knew the law, but they did not obey. They did not keep the law. Okay, they knew the law. They were given the law. They knew it, but they failed in keeping of the law. That's verse 20. Let's go to verse 21. Though therefore which teaches another, that is them, the Jews, teaches thou not thyself. In other words, what he's saying, you teaching somebody else, what to do, you got to do it yourself. You got to do it yourself. Jesus mentioned that many times. He said, you putting burdens, you doing this, and you won't even lift a finger to do it. So you can't be a teacher teaching others, just like me doing something that I know is harmful. Yeah, but you shouldn't do this. Huh? Well, you teaching me, telling me I shouldn't do it, but you doing it. Okay, that's what he said. Okay, and 21. Therefore, thou teachest another, teachest thou not thyself. Thou that preachers and man should not steal, do I steal? In other words, he said, well, stealing is wrong. At the same time, I'm stealing. How does that look? Okay, this is what Paul is telling the Jews here. This section is to the Jews. You telling me thou should not steal. That's what the law says, clearly. But doest thou steal? He's asking a question. Verse 22. Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery. You said you shouldn't commit adultery. Do thou commit adultery? Okay, it's a question. Thou that abhorrest idols, do thou commit sacrilege? In other words, do you rob temples? Like, wait a minute. You telling me I shouldn't do that? You should be doing the same thing. You got the law, you know the law, but they failed to keep it. They were doing all of these things, okay? Just like the example last week. This woman was caught in the very act of adultery. But where's the man? They failed to bring up that issue. Okay, verse 23. Thou that makest thy boast of the law, though breaking the law, dishonors God. I mean, he said, you that make your boast about the law, though breaking the law, okay, you dishonoring God. Okay, you say, well, yeah, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Okay, you boasting about that. We have the law. Yeah, we have the law, but we're not observing the law. That's a whole different story. And this is what this outline is talking about. Practice, not possession. Oh, they possessed the law, but they didn't practice the law. Possessing it and not practicing it is of no good. And this is Paul, the Apostle Paul was talking to these Jews about. Oh yeah, you possess the law, but you're not practicing it. You got to practice. As the old saying go, practice what you preach. Are you preaching that? But are you practicing it? No. And their notion was because they were God's chosen people, they felt the fact that they had the law, that their salvation was guaranteed. No, you got to be a doer. You're not just having it, you got to be a doer. By you being Abraham's seed, that was their trump card all the time. You know, that was their trump card. We be Abraham's seed. We be Abraham's seed. So that guarantees us salvation. No, it doesn't. That's why it was wrong. They had to be doers of the law, as well as possessing the law. Possession was not it. That was not the 100%. Well, we possess it, but they failed to observe the law. They failed to be a doer of the law. And 24, which is the last verse in this outline, the second outline. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Jews through you. In other words, God is, by their conduct, by their action, the name of God is blasphemed because of you not being observers, not being doers of the law. Let's read that again. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles. Is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, because of you, okay? Because of your claims that you are making, that we be Abraham's seed, and we know the law, we teaching the law, don't do this, don't do that, but you're doing it. You're blaspheming the name of God among the Gentiles when you do that, okay? So now let's go to our third outline is verses 28 and 29. And the title of that outline is The Inside Counts. Now, as I said, the second outline was to the Jews. This what they were claiming, this what they, their allegation that we be Abraham's seed. We are exempt. We are somehow exempt. We are somehow justified because we were given the law. That justifies us. No, it does not. You got to be a doer of the law. Just by possessing it did not justify anyone. So verse 28 and 29, the inside counts. Okay, let's read for 28. For he is not a Jew, which is outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outwardly of the flesh. So, but he is a Jew, which is inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, and the spirit, and not the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. It's if you are a doer, if it's the heart, it's the inward thing, it's the inside that counts. It's by being a doer of the law. I mean, they were, oh, we were circumcised, but yeah, we circumcised, but we don't keep the law. We circumcised of the flesh, and that's not it. It's circumcision of the heart that what counts. That's the most important thing. So the Jews thought that keeping the law was equated to righteousness, and it wasn't. And we won't talk about it much, but they didn't keep the law anyway. They couldn't keep the law perfectly anyway. So the point is this, is that it's doing what is right inwardly. That's where it's count. That's when it's talking about you keeping the law outwardly, being circumcised and all of the various rituals that they would observe, but in their heart, they was not righteous. They did not fulfill the law. So the circumcision, which is an outward showing, okay, it wasn't a circumcision, it was a circumcision of the heart. In other words, according to the law, they needed to be circumcised. They had to be circumcised, true, but they also had to keep the law. So it wasn't just circumcision alone, okay, that would make them righteous in the sight of God. They had to also keep the law. It wasn't or, it was and. Or means you could do one or the other. Well, we were circumcised, so we don't have to worry about keeping the law. No, they had to, the Jews were required to be circumcised and keep the law, not circumcised or keep the law. Well, oh yeah, they were circumcised, true, but they did not keep the law, and that's where they failed. They thought that the fact that they were Abraham's seed, they were considered righteous because of that. Their salvation was guaranteed. No, if they were circumcised and they kept the law, okay, and that's your inward. That's in the heart. Okay, that's in their heart. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly. Oh, they were the Jews on the outside. They kept all the tradition. They were circumcised on the 8th day according to Moses and all of that. And remember, we had a lesson that if the 8th day happened to fall on a Sabbath, they would circumcise you, because regardless of whether it was a Sabbath or not, you could be circumcised, because they made sure we're gonna keep this. We're gonna keep the law as to circumcision, that's an outward showing. But inwardly, we don't have to keep the law. But 29 says, which is our key verse, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and the circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. So that's what Paul is saying. It's the inside, the heart, that is more important. That is also important. I'll put it that way. Okay. And that's our lesson today. In other words, having the law is not enough. Keeping it is just as important. You need to have it and you need to keep it. And this is our lesson. We'd like to thank you for watching. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.